Well, welcome to my second presentation. I was asked to look at three areas which are linked into the hypothesis about aging and do some comparisons between some of the hypotheses that there are. And these are the subjects that I'll be looking at: development and aging theories. There are a lot of aging theories. Um, Nothing wrong with that. Everyone has a go at their own aging theory. Rapamycin and rapalogs, and lifestyle issues, exercise, sleep, nutrition, and how that all links together. So moving on to development and aging theories. Let's see, where are we? There we go. Right, well, we know development follows a program from the initial fertilization of the egg through the development of an embryo. The embryo with mammals is born, goes through sexual maturity. For women, goes through the menopause and death. And these are all definable events because when it comes to aging diseases like osteoporosis, you can diagnose it, but obviously people develop it gradually over a period of time. Now, when I wrote this script, well, not script, but just these pages, a few days ago, I was thinking, well, there's actually good evidence, and I'll go into it in a bit, about the linkage of the last 3 points, particularly obviously for women, because it's not such an issue for men. And they're clearly linked. And I think actually, and I'm going to study this in the sense of read up on papers, early birth is clearly not a good sign for health. But going on anyway, so here are a couple of papers. The first one links early menarche to early menopause, and the second one links early menopause to a greater level of mortality. There's no sense going into the details of those papers, and they're not isolated papers. There's loads of papers there. But the point I'm saying about this is I think this is driven by a deterioration in the average mitochondrial membrane potential. And the links are because they're caused by the same thing rather than some other link. So because it's caused by the same process, if you don't deal with that process, you don't change the risk factors. So I think that's what it is. But I think those aging theories that are based upon development all fit to this particular factual basis. And obviously, whatever hypothesis you have, it needs to fix to the facts that we know, the facts we have from research. So there are a large number of aging theories, and some of them are linked to development. And the three I'll look at now are the sort of David Sinclair loss of epigenetic information, the cellular reprogramming approach, hyperfunction, and my genomic failure, the link to the citric acid bicycle, or the fact that it's all controlling the gene expression through the levels of acetyl-CoA and acetylation in the nucleus. So going on, we have David Sinclair's cellular reprogramming. Now, I'm not going to go into the great details of this, as a lot can be read about it. But in essence, his ideas are that the epigenome, that is, that which controls genomic expression, is lost, and that somewhere the program has been failed. And if you reboot that program, then it works properly. And there's he has some good evidence as to things that have been achieved. Hyperfunction is basically the idea that as people get older, things start going wrong. When in a sense, you can't deny that. It's sort of overexpressed a little bit as the concept of hyperfunction. But you can't deny that things go wrong. And in a sense, it's compatible with my own view, which is that as part of development and through variations on splicing factors, and the point about splicing factors is that you have with any one gene the ability potentially to produce a number of different sets of RNA, or at the end of it, proteins. And that's clearly linked. There's good evidence that it's linked to the power level of the cell, which is indicated by the acetyl-CoA level in the cytosol and nucleus. And it's linked to mitochondrial efficiency, and it's linked to senescence, the presence of senescent cells. And those two key drivers, inefficient mitochondria and the presence of senescent cells, cause gene expression to change. And you can see that very clearly in prostate cancer, where prostate cancer is known to be driven by aberrant splicing. And that, again, I haven't got a paper here, but there's plenty of papers on that. So if we look at a comparison, going at the bottom of the page first, really, hyperfunction, it's a bit vague. There's no idea on mechanisms there particularly. And in fact, in a sense, it fits with my own genomic function, where all the mechanisms are known. We know which chemicals it is that are doing all of these things. Cellular reprogramming has been quite successful because the experiments have produced some really good things, such as the regrowth of it was optical nerves and things like that, which was really very good bit of experimentation. And the difference between cellular reprogramming and my own approach is that we don't know with cellular reprogramming where the program is that is rebooted. We don't know where it's stored and how it works, whereas the genomic function, we do know that because it's quite clear where it's stored. And so we have to then ask a question, which is, why cellular reprogramming produces anything, and B, how we can get a benefit from that, where the problems may lie if the genomic function hypothesis is not true and there is some other vague backup system that controls development. So genomic failure has known rectification systems, but it isn't widely tested. There's like scores of people trying to adjust the splicing of genes, although some of the aspects which are about improving mitochondrial power are just part of normal longevity standard things that people do. Cellular reprogramming involves using particularly 3 genes known as the Yamanaka factors, which are genes which enable a cell to revert to being pluripotent. Now, one of the complexities of pluripotency and gene expression and the differentiation of genes is it's very often strongly linked to levels of partial pressure of oxygen. So the stem cell niches are hypoxic, and that drives quite a lot of that. Now, the theory of cellular reprogramming is we just start the cells going again, and they go down this program. We don't really know where it is and what it does. In practice, in doing that, one of the 3 genes that it expresses is called SOX2, and SOX2 is a gene that encourages autophagy to improve the efficiency of the mitochondria. So cellular reprogramming, part of what it's doing is actually doing what the genomic failure hypothesis would want to have done. So the success of cellular reprogramming, those successes that it has do not contradict the genomic failure hypothesis. The danger of cellular reprogramming is that you're aiming to get cells to forget their identity. Now, if you do that in mass numbers, you could have problems with the soma. So, if you're trying to fix cells in the wall of arteries whilst the heart is beating, there potentially you could get a bleed of some sort, and the actual the walls of the arteries could break. So it's a mechanism. It has had some success. Whether it is a mechanism that can be used to do with the whole body, well, we shall have to see. I think there are better ways of improving mitochondrial efficiency. And hyperfunction is so vague that it's really just stuck with the random experimentation, some of which is producing good results. And I think actually, and I'll come to it, Aubrey de Grey's work on the LEV Foundation work with the mice, the robust mouse regeneration approach is quite good. Some of the other work being done looking at worm experiments is interesting as well. So I'll go back and finish off. So that's in essence how I see it, which is the difference between the genomic failure hypothesis is all the biochemistry is known, and it's just a solution, and it would be falsifiable to why creatures develop an age and what can be done to it, and in over time by testing it, by actually doing things to try to improve the function of the genome, we'll find out how good that is. Moving on, rapamycin is a drug which was discovered on Easter Island, Rapa Nui, which is why it's called rapamycin. It's also called sirolimus. And it has a very interesting backstory, but I'm not going to go into that now because you can get that from anybody. It inhibits a kinase in the cells called mTOR. mTOR is a bit recursively designed because it's the mammalian target of rapamycin. So it was defined as being identified as the molecule that was inhibited by rapamycin. It's quite complicated how you've got different versions of mTOR, complex 1 and complex 2, but in a simplistic manner, mTOR is a flag in a cell which says there's lots of energy around, lots of nutrients. We're in a situation where we don't have to worry about being efficient. We can build things, etc. And one of the things about inhibiting mTOR is when mTOR is inhibited, it holds back cell division. And that's used for one of the functions of rapamycin, which is to hold back the immune system for people who have transplants. Because if it's not going to create white blood cells, you're less likely to reject the transplant. It's not just kidney transplants, all transplants. One of the immune modulators potentially used is rapamycin. But if you inhibit mTOR, you also encourage autophagy, the recycling of damaged bits of the cells, or mitophagy, and particularly the recycling of damaged elements of the cells. Now, what's nice about mitophagy is what the cell does is it chews up the mitochondria, which have the lower mitochondrial membrane potential. So they're the less efficient mitochondria. And when the cell then generates more mitochondria, what it does is that it generates them from, obviously it has to generate from the mitochondria it already has, because they're effectively like little cells in the cell. And they're generated from the more efficient mitochondria, which haven't been destroyed. So rapamycin, when you take rapamycin, it encourages autophagy. And there are lots of, I don't mind answering questions. I'm doing some quite serious experimentation with rapamycin at the moment. And I participate in a group, online group called the Rapamycin News Forum, which is very useful for people who are interested in it. But I won't go into too much more detail. There is also good research evidence in mouse models. There's the intervention testing program, which is very, very good for testing how various molecules have an effect. And they do it in 3 different labs. So they're looking for replicable results. And one of the dangers in longevity research is a lot of research is not replicable. And so they have found that rapamycin improves the median lifespan of genetically heterogeneous mice. That is, those which are not inbred, but natural mice, really. And Aubrey de Grey's LEV Foundation have been studying the various combinations, both including and excluding rapamycin. and they're finding similar results. So it's generally thought that rapamycin does work in terms of fighting the key aging pathways. So that's the strength of rapamycin. Now, coming on to my final section, lifestyle, exercise, sleep, nutrition. It's perhaps do what your mother told you to, or perhaps do what your grandmother told you to do, which is not to lie around, to go to bed early, and to eat well, and not to overeat. Exercise, use it or lose it. There's I was watching a video recently where it said one way of preventing dementia is to have a more challenging intellectual activity. So if you have a job that requires using brain power, then what happens is that acts to prevent dementia. But it's a standard part of the body. If you don't use part of the body, it atrophies. A lot of this operates through the hypoxia-inducible factor 1 alpha, which is a transcription factor that is part of building. There's some very interesting, if you're interested in hormesis, there's very interesting balance between HIF1 alpha, NRF2, and NF-kappa B, which is the differential response to various types of hypoxia. And it gives the sort of U-shaped curves that come with hormesis, where initially something can be beneficial, and then if you get too much of it, it's harmful. So in exercise, a lot of people talk about trying just to do 10,000 steps. In fact, 7,000 are thought to do some good. You get reducing returns with exercise. So different types of exercise have different merits. It's very hard to do too much exercise. It's generally thought the resistance exercise is particularly good. That's because you're straining the muscles, and therefore you're telling the body that it's not strong enough. It needs to get stronger. And what's very, very interesting was an experiment that people did where they encased one arm in a cast and they exercised only the other arm, and they found a small amount of growth happened on the arm that was not being exercised. Obviously, most of the growth arms on. So there is a systemic effect to exercise. And I think that clearly comes through the fact that exercise is improving the mitochondria. And the body shares mitochondria in a number of different ways. Three main ways are through platelets, through macrophages, and through extracellular vesicles. So that's the key to exercise, that you are creating systemic improvements. And I always see it sad when somebody is using an electric wheelchair, because obviously they're not pressuring themselves to work, and that in itself will result in their body deteriorating faster than otherwise. But it's difficult because you cannot reverse everything by exercise. Sleep is essential. We know that. Sleep is a very complex process. Very often, the best ways of improving sleep are through CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, things like not looking at blue lights, etc. And it's an interesting thought that creatures may have initially developed to have brains that were actually sleeping, and then later developed something that could be managed temporarily where they are awake. And there's some interesting cycles linked to sleep. The daily circadian cycle is linked to autophagy, for instance. There is a thing called the ultradian cycle, or the HPA cycle, or sleep cycles. It's linked to the hypothalamus, adrenal, and pituitary glands, and particularly to the cortisol awakening response, CAR. And this is a key driver with sleep. When older people having problems waking up in the middle of the night, that's because their autonomous nervous system is shifting into the sympathetic state. A lot of people don't know that it only lasts for 90 minutes. So you can't get to sleep straight away, but actually if you set everything up the right way, when you next run through the autonomous nervous system, particularly if you take a small amount of melatonin, it'll get you back to sleep. Melatonin, a very, very, very important part of the sleep process. Melatonin is well known as a sleep hormone, but it should be better known that it's created in every single mitochondria in the body as its primary antioxidant. And what a lot of medics miss is that a large proportion of nocturnal melatonin is initially injected into the third ventricle of cerebrospinal fluid. And it's not clear what proportion is injected into the CSF vis-a-vis the proportion that's injected into serum. But there was a study done on sheep which found the vast majority goes into the CSF, and then it comes out of that into serum. And the point about that is that if that is the case, and we know that the concentration of melatonin in the CSF is higher than serum, we know that actually a lot more melatonin is being generated and injected into the brain effectively during the night than appears in the serum. And we also know it resists the damage to mitochondrial DNA, apart from, and we also know that when people go to sleep, their blood pressure goes down and the cerebral spinal fluid sort of sprays the brain a little bit. Obviously, it doesn't exactly that way, but it becomes more available to the brain. And obviously, melatonin then is available to the brain. So it raises questions as to whether additional melatonin could have a multiply great effect, not in the small doses of 2 or 3 milligrams, but in the 100 milligram dose levels, in maintaining cognitive function. Only time will tell on that. Nutrition, this is the hardest one, and I'm not going to talk about it very much because it's too complicated, really. There's so many different molecules, and human metabolism is really rather complicated. Human beings, other creatures, are really developed for feast and famine. So when there's the chance of eating carbohydrates, the humans go off to eat it as much as they can. And metabolic syndrome, diabetes, etc., is quite similar in the way it operates to hibernation, but we don't hibernate. High glucose levels in serum damage mitochondrial DNA, and that obviously impacts on aging. Vitamin D, interestingly, produces an annual food cycle, and I think people miss on vitamin D that there are about 1,000 genes that the expression of which depends on vitamin D. And because protein production is a massive energy demand, having certain genes that are only expressed when there's more food around is quite useful for managing life. Many nutrients have optimal levels, but can be overdone. Zinc is a good one. It's very easy to do on zinc. Molybdenum is one people don't think of very much. And the idea that you shouldn't eat too much is a very basic point, very straightforward. Now, I'll talk about an unusual thing that people don't often talk about, which is alcohol. A lot of people drink alcohol, but they don't do the best thing they could do to minimize the harm from alcohol. And the thing to understand about alcohol is it starts as ethanol, which creates the woozy feeling and has some interesting effects. Like, for instance, it reduces the level of glucose in the body, not increase it. But that's converted reasonably rapidly by the body into acetaldehyde. And that's then converted normally quite slowly into acetate. Now, acetaldehyde is really quite harmful. And most of the harm from ethanol is caused by acetaldehyde. Acetate itself is actually relatively good for the body. And the fact is that if you can accelerate the conversion of acetaldehyde into acetate, you can reduce the amount of harm being done to the body from ethanol. Pantethine, interestingly, which is a version of vitamin B5, creates a non-rate limited creation of the coenzyme A molecule, and that accelerates the conversion of acetaldehyde into acetate. So it's very important people don't get pantothenoic acid, which is vitamin B5, but get pantethine if they want to experiment with this. The only negative side effect from pantethine, which is a natural substance and found in the body anyway, is it can delay blood clotting. So you have to be careful about that. Another molecule that's useful that isn't endogenous is dihydromoracetin, also known as raisin tree. Melatonin can help also to reduce the harm of alcohol, but be very careful with melatonin because it's quite unpredictable in how it responds. BAE Bay or Korean pear is another interesting thing. Molybdenum, oddly enough, because there are 4 human enzymes which depend on molybdenum to be created, it's something that can be used to speed up, to create more of one of the enzymes that converts acetaldehyde into acetate, and therefore that can have merit. But then that can put up urate or uric acid, and that runs the risk of having gout occurring. So there's issues with molybdenum. There are no patents on any of these things, and because there's no patents, nobody markets them. So that although this information is quite well known, it's very rarely mentioned, and it's a very easy way of reducing the harm from alcohol. So there we go. I'm going to stop at that point and stop the share. Add a few papers. Now, there you go. So there's a few things.
All right, John. Well done. Brilliant presentation. A lot to think about, a lot to talk about. The questions always become those, how do we advance these things? How do we, validate our assumptions and prove out our hypotheses and clearly demonstrate that something is beneficial? And then once we've done that, how do we get that into the hands of the people that need it? And that's the challenges with
That's true. That's very true.
of this. Yeah.
That's where I would recommend, if people are interested in rapamycin, they should go to the Rapamycin News forum online. You can participate in that. I am doing an experiment with a reasonably high dose of rapamycin, where I am doing blood tests every 2 weeks, and I am also wearing a CGM. So I have charts of and the point about rapamycin is it does send your metabolism haywire for a bit. And that's a known side effect, but it has other effects. So I'm noticing, I can show you if you want. I've got my macro camera where I can see where new hair follicles are developing as a consequence of taking rapamycin.
Interesting.
So if you want, I can get the camera out and sort of try. Do you want me to get a camera out?
Totally up to you. Totally up to you.
All right. It's sort of. I'll have to take this camera. Whoops! So I just kicked the dog. I've just kicked the dog. She didn't complain. I just was waving my leg at this and see what we can do. No, she wasn't very pleased, but let's just get this one. Now, that is a macro camera. And actually, if I just put a light on here.
Yeah.
All right. So the dog is going to be fed now. So you can see there that, this is a bald patch. So this was all bald. And there's hairs growing. And some of the hairs being created by citrate, but I've kept the citrate constant recently, and I've varied the. So you can see little hairs developing there. You see, because you've got the ones that were there earlier. Obviously, I track this on a daily basis because it's the easiest way of spotting what's happening with mitochondria. So if I stop that a sec, so that gives you some ideas there. But the point I would make about one of the problems with RCTs is there was an RCT done recently on rapamycin, and it was hobbled by the placebo. So it took such a low dose of rapamycin. Can you hear me all right at the moment?
Oh yeah, just fine. Yep.
It took such a low dose of rapamycin that it had almost no effect. The problem is we can go so far doing experiments where the dose is so low that it has no effect, and we prove it's safe again. But we've proved it's safe loads of times.
Yeah.
Whereas I took the equivalent of about 70 milligrams, and that's quite a high dose. And I will publish on the Rapamycin News forum exactly what's gone on and how the different biomarkers of mood and what's happened to glucose and things like that. It's quite interesting because and without doing the CGM, you wouldn't know, but in practice, it appears to put the glucose levels up, but not the peaks, which is interesting because it's the peaks that cause particular harm. Because when you get particularly high glucose levels, and you go over what is in England called 8 millimolar, and America is, I think, called 144 milligrams per deciliter or something like that. But that's where you start getting into more ROS being created and overwhelming the reactive, or overwhelming the antioxidants, the endogenous antioxidants like melatonin. So I think I think that the X Prize has quite a bit of potential of having a standard set of tests. But I think I don't know if you know about Brad Stanfield's RCT he's running on rapamycin in New Zealand. He's done a nice job with it, but again we're a bit stuck on dosing levels because it's very dose dependent. If you take a small dose, it's not going to do very much. And one of the problems is always this placebo thing. If you want to move the needle on aging, you're not going to have it done with a placebo. And the Pearl trial was hobbled by using a placebo, because not only did they have a very small dose because they didn't want people to have to take lots of pills, but also it was compounded, so it wasn't enteric coated, and it didn't make its way in a large amount through the stomach.
Okay.
So it was basically, it was a lot of money spent to not tell us very much.
Right.
That was they meant well. I'm not being sort of negative in terms of, they were trying quite hard, but I think we have to be realistic that dealing with the aging pathway is not something you can do with a placebo. And if you hobble your experimentation in such a way as you're trying to do it the gold standard with an RCT, you're actually going to take a long time not getting very much information.
Yeah. It's interesting. Extending life has to be done in such a way that the quality of life continues. This has been
it's health span.
Yeah.
You have to focus actually on health span. You don't want to focus on. But the reason why all the experiments are done on lifespan is because it's easily quantifiable. But actually, what we need to achieve is an improvement of health. And even if we just get compressed morbidity, that and everyone lives to like 95, very, very healthy, and then dies.
Suddenly,
it'd be improvement from where we are at the moment. But yes, it's not. I'm not interested in surviving as a physical creature with a brain not functioning and living in a bucket somewhere.
Yeah, we're struggling with that right now with my wife's mother. She's now 96 years old, has been in and out of the hospital, is suffering from Alzheimer's, dementia. She has all kinds of physical ailments.
Yeah.
Despite all that, for most of the time, she's reasonably, I don't want to say happy, but not unhappy.
Yeah.
And there are those moments where she's just like, why am I still here?
Yeah, but it does go. Some people with dementia get into a very aggressive state as well. So it's
Yes.
But this is, you have this question, like, if people took a lot of melatonin, would it fix their brains? Not 3 milligrams, but some serious, like hundreds of milligrams. We don't know, and the problem with that is this is where it's for under Helsinki, I can experiment on myself as much as I want, and it's understandable that the biohacking is useful because basically you can decide on your risks, and then take your own decisions, and you can identify the safety of a process. But most of these things are known already. There's a lot of evidence of, for instance, of people trying to commit suicide with melatonin and completely failing. So they go to hospital, have a little bit of a sleep, and that's it. And actually, even with rapamycin, people have tried to commit suicide with rapamycin and not got anywhere. They've just got the usual response of the lipids going a bit haywire for a while. Now, on the other hand, rapamycin does have potential other hazards like angioedema, which
Mhm.
in certain I've got the cat now. Go on. So the cat's come here because it wants to be fed, and I will
Yeah.
feed it later on. Because you can sit down there. I'm just sitting in my sitting room with a strange RNA polymerase 2 in the background.
Yeah.
I should take it off because it confuses the equipment when the
It
cat's
sure
sitting.
does. Yeah. Yeah.
But no, it's part of life, isn't it? Let me just see what I can
Mhm.
do. Um, it's the ah, yeah. Yes. What have we got? Have we got background? No. Sure. What do we?
You can
Cat.
set it to none if you like. I mean, we're just
Yeah. So
talking.
what it should be just where actually the best thing for me to do is probably to use a different video driver, and then that would be a bit more realistic. Come on, turn on. Oh, it's got completely confused. Cannot start video because the other thing is using it now. So I've got to take the video camera off there. Well, that's okay. I've
Mhm.
done that. And then hopefully this one should work. Is it working? Yeah, we've
There
got the
we are.
cat.
Yes, there you
So you
go.
can see the cat in the lounge and everything. But still, yeah, I personally I think there are real difficulties with the route that is being selected. But on the other hand, there are people who are surging out on there, and I think the X Prize has some potential as long as they stay where they are, which is they have controls, but they don't require placebo control. Soon
Yeah.
as you have placebo control, my team will pull out of the X Prize if they
Mm.
require placebo control, because it's a waste of time. We are
Yeah.
not we're not talking about something relatively minor
Hmm.
where changes in cortisol can suddenly get rid of all the diseases of aging.
Yeah. Yeah.
We're talking about quite a major shift, and it's not something you can test for with when you're stuck into this. People don't know what they're doing, and it's just there's so many challenges, so many challenges.
Yeah. Yeah. What it's really going to take, quite frankly, is getting to truly the root understanding of what goes on during, you know, um, reproduction and cellular replication.
No, no, it is, but I think I'm right. I have papers to cover each part of this process.
Yeah.
Not So when I say, well, all the molecular work's already been done,
Hmm.
it's just not been put together, and I've experimented with it. And so all these weird hairs are very often hairs that I didn't used to have previously, and you can see hairs which have changed color and things like that. But I've not dyed anything, you see,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I don't use Botox, right? Yeah, well, that's a con, isn't it? You're not
Yeah.
reversing aging.
No.
You're basically killing off muscles.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm not, yeah, I don't look as if I've achieved a major anything, but I actually on the biomarker side I have.
I'd be more concerned about your perceptions. Do you feel better? Are you
Oh,
thinking
I
more?
feel better. Yeah, there's no aches and
Yeah.
pains.
Yeah. Yeah.
You've got the sort of sitting on the floor and standing up type thing. I do need my arm to get myself off my feet, sort of thing, but I
Hmm.
can sit down on the floor without. I can try and demonstrate that if you want, but
No. 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 It's okay.
well, the thing is, I know what I was like a few years
Yeah.
ago.
Yeah.
So I know, like, if I'm driving in my car, I can turn all the way around in the seat and reverse without any
Mhm.
struggle. Whereas a few years ago, I could hardly turn round.
Okay. Well, those are the indicators I'd be looking
Those,
for.
those are
It gets,
those are functional tests.
yeah.
Right? The fact that I can do chin-ups and I couldn't do that when I was a teenager. Um,
Mm.
the fact I can do chin-ups isn't such a big thing because I do exercise. So I'm going to be improving my strength.
Hmm.
But there is an issue. Sarcopenia is you can't put on muscle, right? So I'm definitely in that area where everything was going wrong and it no longer is.
Okay. Well, clearly you're getting results. That's what's
So I'm
important.
getting results. So I'm happy from that point of view. And obviously, this is an interesting um, research area where your primary objective is your own personal health, probably, or that of your family.
Hmm.
So it's nice to get that, even if nothing else happens from it.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. All right. Well, thanks for the time.
No problem. Well, look, it's recorded as well, so
enjoy-
other people can listen to it.
Absolutely.
And there are stuff in that yeah, it's not hidden away like the thing about the cerebrospinal fluid and melatonin, but people aren't aware of it.
Yeah.
But the difficulty is when things don't have patents and people can't make money out of promoting it, nobody does.
Mm-hmm.
It's not. There's no sort of nothing conspiracy theory about it. It's just if you're not going to make money out of it, you don't promote it.
Yeah.
And so and also I do a lot of reading, so you learn a lot by reading.
Mhm. All right. Well, I'm actually looking forward to sharing this with some associates of mine that also have an interest in aging and anti-aging and living healthy. I have a friend of mine who's now 88 years old, who is still very mentally acute, very physically fit, and he ascribes that to his nutrition regime, getting enough rest and proper exercise, and nothing more.
Yeah, well, you do a lot with that.
Yeah.
It's not the point about lifestyle is you're hitting the thing like the mitochondria, you're managing your glucose.
Yeah.
Um, you can do a lot. I think they say it's 15 years, something like that, of extra
Mhm.
good health.
Yeah.
And yeah, definitely. But I was obese a couple of years ago.
Mm.
So, I was properly fat
Yeah.
with a BMI of about 35. So,
I'm not quite there myself, but it's interesting. From the time I graduated high school at 18 to the time I was about 55, 56 years old, my weight only fluctuated by about 5 or 10 pounds.
yeah,
And then over the last 5 or 6 years, I've put on a consistent 10 pounds every year.
yeah.
And I'm trying to figure out what changed, that
It,
caused that to happen.
well, it's all metabolic stuff. Have you
Mhm.
have you tried wearing a CGM?
I haven't. Although
No.
I know I have my physician is very fond of telling me I appear to be physically fit, but I have horrible blood chemistry.
Yeah,
And
well, that's the thing. You see, wear a CGM, even just get 10 days of it.
mhm.
All right. Oh yeah.
Hello, John.
Hey,
We've
Hi,
Jim.
almost
Chris.
finished, but I've just I do my argument of that even people who aren't diagnosed as diabetic should wear a CGM for 10 days a year.
Yeah,
All right, to get baseline.
yeah.
But if you
And you
see
can
where
you can just purchase those, right? You don't need anything to.
I think, well, in the UK we can just purchase them. I
Yeah.
think in America it's just gone OTC. Use
Hmm.
Dexcom, not Abbott.
Yeah.
Dexcom are a lot better than Abbott.
Okay.
Abbott
Excellent.
aren't bad. Freestyle's not bad. But
Mhm.
Dexcom, I've got it's on, and here's some
Yeah.
advice. That's a good place to put it.
Uh-huh. Yep.
Very hard to find where you see. I drink a lot, okay, and I can go to bed with that on, drunk, fall asleep,
Yep.
and it keeps working. All right, and so I've not had any problems with sleeping because you can put it
Yep.
on your belly, you can put it on your upper arm. If you put it on there's all sorts of risks.
Yeah.
All right. But I've probably put a CGM on 6 times. So I
Hmm.
started in 2022, did some more in 2023, and I'd got a much better glucose then. And then this year with the rapamycin, I put the CGM on before taking the rapamycin. Then you see everything change.
Yeah.
That in itself, I don't know anyone else has done that.
Hmm.
And that just is useful for anyone who wants to take it because it'll be published not in the Nature Journal, but on Rapamycin News Forum, and I'll put it on my website as well. But you know,
Okay. Interesting.
but yes, no, there's a lot you can do, and sleep is very important. There's no question about it. Sleep's important for lots of reasons, but the multiple effects of melatonin, you want a good lot of melatonin, but and you can just buy it over the counter in America.
Yeah. Yeah, you can. Yeah, you can. All
Yeah.
right. Well, John,
So
thanks
I had
again.
a busy day. Hey, how are you, Chris, John?
Hey.
So I had a really busy day, and I wasn't able. I'm going to listen to this recording here.
Yeah, well, no, that's the whole point. The recording, hopefully,
Yeah.
we are recording. So when this
Yeah.
ends, I will get it on YouTube for you,
Yeah.
and
Okay. Perfect.
and then
And
when
I'll
I put
upload
it,
it.
and then I'll upload it on YouTube and just send you the link. It's the
Mhm.
easiest thing to do because
Yep.
I'll
Okay.
have that done probably. Well, I might have to do it tomorrow. I don't know. We'll have to see.
Well,
Depends what-
I would advise to do it as soon as possible. The earlier the better, just so that the other judges can
Well,
can
let's see what we
also
can do. Yeah.
approve.
Well,
Because
I'll
tomorrow
do
we
what I.
have the vote.
Yeah, no, it'd be nice if I could make some more progress on the vote. I'm not doing too well at the moment, but it's
Yeah.
all these
No,
things, isn't it?
No, you're doing quite well. You were up there in the running, and you're one of the
Oh, and in the
leaders. So-
running, yes. Well, it's obviously I want to try and get into the finals and win because I want to promote everything. You know, well,
Yeah.
yeah, if
like
I
the
win,
spirit.
I start
That's what
promoting
this
it. I
event
go
is all
everywhere saying,
about.
"Look, I've just won this," you know. But
Just to
well,
give you
that's what
some
you do.
history, by the way, the first year that we did this, somebody who was in fourth place in the first round ended up edging someone out. They just kept improving, and they won.
Well,
When we
let's
had
see.
an overall winner last year, it was actually a leader who just held on the
Yeah,
entire time. This year we have two. We're gonna have two winners, right, in two categories,
okay,
in which we so yeah.
well,
So
see how it goes. You never
anything's
know.
possible.
All right, cheers. Anyway, well, you'll find it interesting.
Oh, quick
Chris,
question
was
on
it
the drinking
interesting?
there, real quick.
Would-
Drinking. You mentioned the drinking. Is there pleiotropic benefit on longevity? I know
Um,
people who
well,
drink, let's say, vodka. One shot of
let's
vodka or something.
let's be
Okay.
straight about it.
Yeah.
In
tell me.
short, it is pleiotropic, right?
Uh-huh.
Probably on a net benefit basis, it's negative, even if you do all the
That's
pills.
what I was thinking.
Probably on a net,
Mhm.
but the effects on glucose are quite significant, as in it puts down blood glucose, right? And if people are stressed, it can calm them down, and that in itself can be useful. The red wine is, well, I'm not a fan of resveratrol, primarily because it's a cyclooxygenase 1 inhibitor, COX-1 inhibitor, and I don't think that's a good thing. There are polyphenols in red wine that potentially are beneficial, but I wouldn't recommend it for that reason. But it's good fun.
So what's your
Okay.
preference, John?
Well, I like Rioja, but I'll drink beer as well.
Ah.
I am a heavy. When I drink, I'm not drinking tonight, but when I drink a lot.
Okay.
All right.
Well, my wife has a preference for red wines. I actually enjoy a good bourbon or a good.
Rioja, nice Spanish Rioja. I like those.
Yeah. All right. Very good.
Well, nice talking to you, and well, hopefully
Yes.
it depends on when it comes out of.
Okay. Yeah. Let me know, John. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Just send it to me via message in the Huba app, and I'll just upload it.
Yeah, well,
Okay.
when we get there, yes. All right, 'cause it's got to be prepared by Zoom first because it's being recorded in the cloud. All right, but
Okay.
I'll say cheery bye, folks. I'll end the call.
All right, John.
Thanks.
Take care.